then you are nearing the end of the Old Testament. In fact, 2 more days, we will finally make it to Matthew. But there's been a lot that we've gone through in the Old Testament, a lot of things to think about, things that we may not have really looked at before. First off, seeing how the Old Testament is really the Messiah concealed. And as we get to the New Testament, we see the Messiah revealed. You see, Jesus is all through the Scriptures. But there's also all of that buildup, showing what God is doing. That there was a plan back in the garden when that fruit was first eaten. God was already prepared. He was already planning. He was already moving. Well, now we come into Nehemiah. But before that, I want to talk about another kind of situation. The creation of the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building was completed on April 11th, 1931. It took 410 days to build this, from the ground floor to the top of the 103rd floor. Honestly, that's a remarkable feat by anyone's standards. In fact, if they were to try to build that today because of all of the laws and stuff, it would take over 5 years before they could even break ground. The height is a staggering 1,454 feet to the top of the antenna on the top of the building. And it took an average of 3,400 to 3,500 workers to complete it, working day in and day out. The majority of those workers, which happened to be Irish and Italian immigrants, and also a group of Mohawk iron workers. These are tribesmen from the Kanawake First Nations Reserve in Canada. Men that were known worldwide for their fearlessness and their steady balance, walking the beams over 1,000 feet in the air without harnesses. If you look back, there's some really cool black and white photos, actually, of some of the Mohawk iron workers and where they would do that. But you see, it's amazing what we can do when we work together. When it's not just one person, but when someone has a vision and they have this clear idea of what they want to do, and they talk and they get other people to join that vision. An architectural beauty develops. Well, you see, Nehemiah recounts a similar building marvel. You see, it was a project that would repair the broken wall and the gates around Jerusalem. It was also a project that would cause conflict with their angry neighbors. But ultimately, it would show God's divine hand once more at work. So how did this building project begin? With one man recognizing that there was a need. Nehemiah 1, verses 1 through 4. These are the memoirs of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In late autumn, in the month of Kislev, in the 12th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was at the fortress of Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, came to visit me with some other men who had just arrived from Judah. I asked them about the Jews who had returned there from captivity and about how things were going in Jerusalem. They said to me, "Things are not going well for those who returned to the province of Judah. They are in great trouble and in disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire." When I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. You see, Nehemiah recognized a need. He saw an area that needed to be addressed. That someone needed to step up and fix this difficult situation. As his brother explained the issues that the returning exiles experienced, his first response was to grieve, to mourn, and then to fast and pray. Not to say somebody else will take care of that, but to get on his knees and say, all right, God, in your hands we trust. You see, he needed to be on his knees discussing the need with God. And it's through these prayers that he began to realize that God was moving, that God would be taking action. In fact, God was moving him to step up. Him to step up and fix the problem that needed to be met. You see, this is a great example for all of us. That passion that we have, that holy desire that develops within us when we see a need. We see something that needs to be fixed. We recognize something's not quite right. That desire that we have is placed there by God. That desire there is to motivate us, not to stay on our seats, but to get up and to move into action. Like Nehemiah, when we feel that desire, we should also choose to fast and be moved to prayer, to take it to our knees. God, is this from you? How should we move forward? You see, oftentimes in our prayers, if we're asking for someone to step up and meet that particular need, God has a funny way of reminding us that he's already got someone in mind. The one that passionately recognized the issue, the deficit, is often the one that God's like, here you are, go. You see, we are the solution that God planned to use for his kingdom. God doesn't need us, but God chooses to use us. The same way he saw a need and he gave Nehemiah this desire to fix it. But he didn't just leave Nehemiah to his own at that point. See, he didn't stop working. And in fact, what it shows is that Nehemiah was thinking about this over and over and praying about it for months at a time. And when God was ready to move, God moved the Persian king. Nehemiah was the cupbearer. So he was the one that would guard the king at all times. He was a friend of the king, a confidant. And one day the king noticed that Nehemiah didn't look happy. And he paused and he asked, Nehemiah, what's wrong? And Nehemiah pauses and says a quick prayer. And then he responds, my homeland is in ruins. You see, God was moving the king to help Nehemiah fix the need. And God is often doing the same with you and I. You see, God is constantly opening the doors to allow us to take the steps to meet the needs around us. But when he opens it, we also have to walk through. We can't just keep sitting and figuring somebody else will go through that door. We have to be willing to listen to God's voice. When he calls you or I, we must be willing to put aside our fears, put aside our excuses, and put aside our doubts, and simply say, Lord, here I am. You see, we have to choose to obey his nudging. And when we simply have to hold on, at that point, once you say yes, God's got it. God's going to continue the work that he has started. We simply have to hold on and watch God move. And just keep walking along. God's going to do it. God will be working behind the scenes, oftentimes in ways that we cannot begin to fathom, in ways to prepare our hearts, to equip us with the skills necessary to complete the task before us, but also in preparation for the people that we will be reaching, preparing their hearts, tilling the soil, so to speak. It's important to note that Nehemiah spent over 3 months praying for opportunities to speak to the king. 3 months of looking for an opportunity to share his burden. 3 months of patiently waiting for God to align all the different moving parts. The truth is, just because we see a need, it does not mean that we should jump in and address it right away. We have to do the right thing at the right time. Because unfortunately, the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. But once Nehemiah saw the path to take, he never looked back. Nehemiah completed the project before him. Once Nehemiah had permission from the king, he immediately went work preparing to rebuild that wall. But he knew that he would not be able to do this alone. One man cannot fill and fix 2.5 miles of wall in a timely manner. So when he gets there, he knows he has to recruit these other men and women by getting them to see his vision. And in Nehemiah 2, 16 through 18, we see that just happen. The city officials did not know I had been out there or what I was doing. He had gone around, walking around all of the wall and seeing everything that needed to be repaired, looking at the gates. For I had not said anything to anyone about my plans. I had not yet spoken to the Jewish leaders, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or anyone else in the administration. But now I said to them, you know very well what trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. They replied at once, yes, let's build the wall. So they began the good work. You see, Nehemiah had to first share his vision with the people. A vision that included a repaired wall, that vital piece of architecture that would allow them to be defensive against their enemies. Allow them to be able to feel some sense of protection in a hostile area. But we also have to have vision. You see, it is the vision that arouses the spirit to want to move. It is the vision that acts as a blueprint for how we act. And it is the vision that keeps us on the right track. Last week, we sent out a church survey link and hard copies. By the way, if you did not get that last week, you can use the QR code here that will take you to the link. I will tell you, though, if you go out of it, you will have to restart. I'm sorry. We learned that the hard way, didn't we, Michelle? We've actually already received multiple very informative responses. Thank you for those that have already responded thus far. There are still a couple of days left. If you have not had time to complete it, we'd like to have those in by Tuesday. You see, this survey is to help the elder board determine whether our vision as a church is fully meeting the needs before us. Are we staying on track with our vision in our day-to-day life? Our day-to-day ministries, our day-to-day activities. If there are areas where our vision has gone astray, we want to address that. We want to be able to say that we are being faithful to what God has called us to do. This is also an opportunity for us to gather other viewpoints, besides the 9 elders and the deacons, to see what others out there are thinking, hey, here's an idea. Have you thought about this? To recognize others' needs that we should focus our energy on. In the next few months, the elder board will be sharing our findings and develop a vision casting team to update the vision for this ministry. To see how do we, after 2 years as a church, our strengths, we can do those well. Let's continue doing those, but also recognizing our deficiencies. How do we overcome that? Proverbs 29:18 says this. This is the ESV version. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law. We need that vision. As Nehemiah was given that vision by God, that desire, there's a need here that needs to be met. And then he turned around, and Nehemiah rose to the occasion. He casted that vision on the people, and the people stood up in throngs. They grabbed their tools, and they got to work. You see, God uses the average man and woman in Jerusalem to build the wall. It was the tailors. It was the goldsmiths. It was the priests. Today is the same way. Those average men and women, they began to put stone upon stone upon stone. And then they worked at the gates, and they began to put the beams together. And then they hung the doors and the hinges. They did this in front of their enemies, in the midst of the taunting, and also in the face of imminent attack. But they didn't lose the vision. They kept going one step at a time. They came together to work, even to the point where they would have to have a sword in one hand and a hammer in the other. They never stopped working. They were there to defend one another, to encourage one another, to lift up one another, to work shoulder by shoulder. And they completed what they had started. So on October 2nd, the wall was finished. Just 52 days after we had begun, when our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized this work had been done with the help of our God. Now that's something to praise. You see, when the children of God are filled with a holy desire to meet a need, when they were given a godly vision of the plan to meet that need, what can stand up against us? What flesh and blood, what prince or principality, what eternal thing can stop us? You see, nothing can stop the work of God. No amount of bullets, no amount of cursing, no amount of persecution, nothing. In fact, when godly men and women step up and they achieve their vision, even the enemies of God stop and take notice. The enemies become humbled. And they start to question, could my God do that? You see, even the enemies of God have a difficult time denying his handiwork. Take for a moment and think. What could God do with the 80-plus brothers and sisters with varying backgrounds, varying skill sets, varying life experiences, sitting in church here today, but all having one vision and one faith? What can our God do? I think he can transform a church community by building disciples of Christ. Not just Sunday Christians, but that we would have a Monday morning faith. That our God could begin to impact the family system by helping us be healers to broken families. Our God can begin to spread the gospel to the lost and the hurting in our community. He can begin to end poverty among our neighbors. That 80 believers on fire for God can start to defeat the chronic loneliness that this generation is experiencing. You see, Our God can take 80 people and he can begin to change the world. Nehemiah built a wall in 52 days. Noah built a boat in 100, It took about 100 years, yeah. But Nehemiah built a wall in 52 days. But what do you think we could accomplish in a lifetime? We just have to recognize the vision that God has given us. That if you've got a passion, if you've got this desire, you see a need, God is asking us, how can we meet this? So I encourage us to be in our knees in prayer and to listen. Because God might be saying, I need you. My name is Sean Courtney. I'm the pastor at Connection Point Church, and I would like to offer you a big welcome to come join us on Sunday mornings for Sunday school at 9 o'clock. We have adult Sunday schools, we have children and youth Sunday school classes available. Then following that, we have worship where we will sing praises, pray for one another, and listen to Bible study. Encourage you, that starts at 10:15. We are at 700 Sycamore Street in Monette, Missouri. Also on Wednesday nights, we have more small groups following a meal that starts at 5:30. We have men's group, women's group, single moms, children, and youth. Encourage you guys to come and join us. We believe it's very important to be actively involved in the body of Christ because here, you're family.